We've got some baseball to break down here on Locked On Nationals. In the Nationals, they dropped two of their first three games against those Philadelphia Phillies teams, but we've got some overreactions. I'm going to tell you this. The bullpen and the Dylan Cruz, my God.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at BrianClary11 and as well as our show page at LO_Nationals. For all your latest Nationals news and notes, make sure to check us out over on Twitter. And of course, look up Locked On Nationals wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, and of course, the video version over on YouTube that you can look up. Again, search Locked On Nationals and hit that subscriber button, drop a thumbs up, or even leave a comment. Later on in today's program, we will be discussing Michael Soroka making his Washington Nationals debut tonight in his home country up in Canada as the Nationals take on a pretty damn good Toronto Blue Jays team. Got Max Scherzer not going tonight against the Nationals. He will not be facing the Nationals up to this point, I believe, this series. We can double check that later on in today's program, but still fun series up ahead in Toronto. We'll preview that later on in today's show. But the starting pitchers were incredible all weekend long. Let's talk about Mackenzie Gore, which we already kind of discussed on Friday's show. But then Jake Irvin, 5 innings pitched, only 2 earned runs. And then in yesterday's ball game, you had Mitchell Parker, 6 1/3 innings pitched, 0 earned runs. Let's talk about those starting pitchers as they were incredible all weekend long. But we get started with today's topic, which is a Nationals overreaction. And I'm going to tell you this right now. People are not going to like this one. Before we jump into it, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. We jump into it starting this week's Nationals overreactions with a pretty big overreaction, I would say. Let's start off with Dylan Cruz. Dylan Cruz, over this first 3 games, was pretty brutal. Like, really brutal, in fact. And I am very high on Dylan Cruz, for the record. I think Dylan Cruz is going to be an all-star caliber player. I think this guy is going to be great. But can we acknowledge the fact that he is 0 for 11 with 8 strikeouts and 1 walk through his first 3 games? In 12 plate appearances so far, he has been on base 1 time. This is not like a good sign. Because if you look at Dylan Cruz's numbers from the spring, they were good, but they weren't great. It wasn't the number 2 overall pick that the Nationals took back in 2023. This wasn't the number 1 prospect in baseball that we have been seeing. This was a pretty big swing and a miss this series, quite literally. The one thing with Dylan Cruz that I felt like a year ago, and I think a lot of Nationals fans out there felt the same, was that Dylan Cruz was going to be a very good major leaguer. I still believe in that. But over the course of last season, getting his cup of coffee in the bigs for the final 2 months of the season, and now this on opening weekend where you have 0 hits over the first 3 games. Now let's put it this way. He faced some really good pitchers. Really good pitchers. You start off with Zach Wheeler on Thursday on opening day. Cy Young winner, one of the best pitchers in baseball. You understand why you go 0 for. And then on Saturday, against Jesus Luzardo, going against a lefty, which he did weirdly struggle against in 2024, he went 0 for 5 with 5 Ks. Then yesterday, had 2 more strikeouts early on in the game, and it just was not the best Dylan Cruz that we have seen so far. I'm not going to sound the alarms just yet on Dylan Cruz. I still believe in what he is. He is going to be a very good defensive right fielder and eventually probably a center fielder as well. And he's going to be a good major league hitter. But early on this season, I was expecting, let's put 2024 to bed. The struggles that he had, not even just in the majors, but also down in the minors, and let's get off to a quick start. That was not the case. He has dug himself into a pretty big hole so far, especially when you look around. Like the Nats offense, while it wasn't terrific this series, it also wasn't that bad. And I've always said, the Nationals are going to go as far as Dylan Cruz, CJ Abrams, and especially James Wood. And those three guys this series were pretty damn quiet. And Dylan Cruz in particular, this was the guy that I thought would kind of hit the ground running right away. Or even James Wood, you could say, who hasn't really done that, but still, he had one laser beam on Saturday right off the wall in left field that should have been a home run, the way that he smacked that ball. Dylan Cruz was my main focal point, though. He was not good this series. And I think if you kind of look deeper into it, he acknowledged that it is a mechanical issue at this point that he has. A lot of swings and misses. He's still not seeing the breaking balls, and he's not getting a fastball because pitchers know when he has a fastball in the zone, he's going to be able to hit it. That's in his resume at this point. People understand that. So Dylan Cruz this weekend, it was brutal. 0 for 11 again with 8 strikeouts in his first 3 games. That's like Rafael Devers kind of numbers when he struck out in his first 10 at-bats this season as a DH with the Boston Red Sox. Man, was it a tough weekend for Dylan Cruz. But now he's going to be on the road, where he has hit a little bit better, by the way. And we'll see what the Nationals can ultimately do with him in the lineup. Will he bat 8th? Will he bat 2nd like he was the past few days? We don't know at this point, but if I'm Davey Martinez, I am sticking put with one particular lineup change, and it's probably moving Dylan Cruz back as of right now. My second overreaction I do want to get into, which was probably the headline of this weekend, this Nationals bullpen, it might stink. Now, this is, again, an overreaction. This is not something that I truly believe. It's only been 3 games. You never know with baseball, especially 3 games in. But my overreaction from this weekend is, oh my God, this bullpen blows. Lucas Sims, one of the Nationals' main guys they acquired in the bullpen this offseason, gave up 2 home runs, each on one on opening day, 1 in game 2. The usage of Orlando Rebalta was not great. He came in, he got rocked after having a terrific spring training and really kind of made his way and made his case to be on this Nationals opening day roster. And then you get into the usage of the bullpen by Davey Martinez. What are we doing all around this? It was laughable at points. It really was. The bullpen gave up 17 runs this series. 17 over 3 games. It was laughable. It was so bad. I truly have not seen a worse bullpen performance over a handful of games than this one by the Washington Nationals. Again, over 3 games, 17 runs out of your bullpen. And it's not like the bullpen was in there to eat a bunch of innings. This is coming off Mackenzie Gore going 6 innings pitched, Jake Irvin going 5 innings, Mitchell Parker going 6 1/3. And the bullpen got rocked. My one problem with the usage as far as Davey Martinez goes is, number one, you should not have a young guy, Orlando Rebalta, eating up a couple of innings. That is a Brad Lord situation. Rebalta is not that kind of bullpen guy, in my opinion, at this point. That should have been a Brad Lord game, and it was not. But still, Brad Lord, he made his first appearance yesterday, immediately got the bases loaded in the 9th, and then Kyle Finnegan came in, shut the door down on those Phillies teams. So that was good to see him get his first save of the season. But this bullpen and the usage of it, oh my God. Another thing that I really kind of took from this past weekend on the bullpen front, is why wasn't Jorge Lopez used in the first 2 games? Like in situations where you were close, in situations to where you're like, we still have a chance and we're still in this game. For instance, on opening day, Jorge Lopez is a proven bullpen piece who has done this on good competitive ball clubs. He should be your number one guy in a close game where you want to keep this game close. You call in Jorge Lopez. That made no sense to me that the Nationals waited until yesterday. Where was he? Why don't you pull him out? Why don't you have him come in and be that fireman? You don't really have that many proven guys at this point, and he is one of them. Jose Ferrer wasn't all that great this weekend. He had some ups. We all see the potential, but still, this bullpen, it looked like a complete, utter mess, and there's no other way to put it at this point. I don't think this bullpen will be that big of an issue for this team. It was, in fact, one of my bold predictions that this bullpen would be a lot better than what you think. And oh my God, after the first 3 games, I might have to take that one back. I do want to highlight this, though, real quick, and we will kind of get into some highlights of this weekend as we get on with the show today. Keibert Ruiz, 2 home runs on this weekend. Incredible performance so far. He looks poised to have a big breakout season. You have to call out that from this weekend. Throwing a runner out at second also. The defense didn't seem to be that big of an issue from this past weekend. It wasn't great, but still, Keibert Ruiz, 2 home runs, a couple added hits in there. He looked awesome. After coming off a great spring training, you got to talk about Keibert and really the big things that he could have coming in 2025. So that's one thing that's for sure. Nathaniel Lowe, couple home runs this weekend. Josh Bell as well, breaking the game open in yesterday's ball game to lead the Nationals to a win. Ahmed Rosario, also a home run this weekend. But 2 big things outside of these overreactions is that the Nationals, they signed Josh Bell to bring power. Nathaniel Lowe, they traded him in hopes to bring some power to the middle of this lineup, and they certainly did their job. So now you start to see the vision of this Washington Nationals team and the organization and where they go. That is a big tell, and it's a good sign for what's to come for the Nationals so far in 2025. It was an exciting weekend. While the Nationals did lose 2 of 3, you had 3 really good starting pitching performances, and one of them that I was completely stunned by. Let's talk about it after we tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel. And of course, March Madness is already here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. And with tournament games happening nearly almost every day these past few weeks, we are now narrowing in the Final Four. I can tell you this, I have got Auburn winning it all. They're going to take on the Duke Blue Devils. It's going to be a very interesting game because both those teams, high-powered offenses. Who will come to play? I've got Auburn. The SEC, they have been the best conference all year. They've kind of been the sleeper underdog. Still, nobody talks about the SEC anymore. I can tell you this, I am. And I've got Auburn. I'm going to splash some cash with our friends over at FanDuel, and visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Again, visit FanDuel.com and get in on the March Madness bracket, and you will have a lot of fun with that. Again, that is FanDuel.com. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Again, look up Locked On Nationals wherever you get your pods, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, and of course the video version over on YouTube. A little bit later on in today's show, in a couple minutes from now, Michael Soroka makes his Nats debut after a really impressive spring training, in my opinion. But I've got some takes that I want you guys to listen because he was one of the big guys this offseason. So we'll discuss that later on in today's program. But let's start off with starting pitchers from this weekend. 3 games, 3 awesome performances. Mackenzie Gore. We talked about it for the first 10 minutes of the show on Friday. 6 innings pitched, 1 hit, 13 strikeouts, and 0 walks. Pretty easily the best start of his career. Unbelievable performance on opening day. Unfortunately, the Nationals bullpen had to come in and kind of ruin the day, but still, unbelievable performance from Mackenzie Gore. We talked about him. Now let's highlight Jake Irvin and Mitchell Parker. Jake Irvin on Saturday, while he didn't really have like his full command, in my opinion, he really wasn't up to like his 100% self. The fact that he was still able to tread water and only gave up 2 earned runs in 5 innings pitched was pretty good. Like the Phillies did have some hard contact against him, but only yielding 7 hits. One thing that I noticed, I think a lot of Nationals fans out there noticed also, because I saw people talking about it and people tweeting about it, but Jake Irvin, his velocity fell off just a little bit. Like if you notice, he was kind of starting to flash 91, 92 miles per hour there in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th innings. And I think that's just kind of early season. It's March. It was a hot day out there, by the way. And I just think that there's a little fatigue in there, and you kind of have to get ready and warm that arm up. And he hasn't really pitched that deep in a game so far this spring. So seeing Jake Irvin kind of fall off a little bit with velo, a little concerning overall, because you would like to see him at 100% and kind of build his way through that, like Mackenzie Gore did on opening day and still pumping 97, 98 in the 5th inning there. But Jake Irvin, that was not the case, but did not hinder what he did. He pounded the zone, only walked 2 batters, only struck out 2 batters, gave up that home run to Bryson Stott. That was just a line drive down the line. But Jake Irvin looked really good still. And it's a promising young start. First start of the year, Jake Irvin looked good. He continues to be a really big success story for this Nationals team, for this Nationals org, and I think he's ready to have a big year. So that was good to see Jake Irvin really kind of bounce back and have a very good start for day 1 for the guy, the 6'6" guy from Minnesota. Last but not least, someone that I was a little tough on the spring training, someone that I have maybe not has been as high on as some people, Mitchell Parker. Unbelievable performance yesterday's ball game, leading the Nationals to their first win of the year. Money Mitch Parker. There's another name out there that I will not call him. 6 1/3 innings pitched, 7 hits, 5 Ks, 2 walks, and 0 earned runs. Here's one thing with Mitchell Parker that I have to give him credit for. He may not have the stuff of DJ Hurst. He does not have the stuff of Mackenzie Gore. He probably doesn't even have the stuff as Jake Irvin. But one thing is for sure is his breaking pitch, it breaks and it fools batters. He can generate some swings and misses on that curveball and that slider, whichever you want to call it. Parker, he is a gamer. Like, he gets up for the big game. That is one thing that I am very convinced of at this point. In his really first start last year at Dodger Stadium, making his debut, he was unbelievable in that series. Came up, shut down the Dodgers, and then his second start at Nationals Park went against a very good Houston Astros offense, shut the door on them as well. Mitchell Parker, man, I got to stop being his ceiling's not too high. He's one of those guys now that just, he gets it done. And you can actually now rely on him to go out there and be a good pitcher every 5 days. Seeing what he did yesterday was great. And yes, you could make the case that, look at the Phillies offense there. They have Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber. They've got a bunch of lefties on that team. And it kind of doesn't bode well for the offensive side of things. It helps Mitchell Parker out. Yeah, maybe. But he still has to get them out. Mitchell Parker looked really good. And you cannot ignore that for this year. Again, 6 1/3 innings pitched, only 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, and 0 earned runs. Yes, there was a lot of hard contact in there. There were times where you may say he got lucky. But Mitchell Parker looked really good. And I don't think that's going to go unnoticed for the Nationals in 2025. So watch out for Mitchell Parker. he might have a big year, and I could be completely wrong as we enter 2025. But next, let's talk about this. Michael Soroka makes his Nats debut after a pretty impressive spring training. I'm going to tell you this. Don't get your hopes up just now. I'll discuss why I think that after this. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you guys can check us out over on YouTube. Just look up Locked On Nationals, and that is where you'll find your daily coverage of the Washington Nationals. Michael Soroka makes his Washington Nationals debut today, as he had a relatively impressive spring training. He got rocked around in one start there, which really inflated his spring ERA, but overall looked good, pounding the zone in a few different times, gave up a couple home runs there, but still, I thought he looked really good, walked a few guys here and there, and Michael Soroka at times has literally been an all-star, has been top 10 in Cy Young votes in 2019, was the second runner-up in Rookie of the Year finalists in 2019, and this is going to be a pretty big start for him because, again, he is born in Canada, starting with the Blue Jays tonight. I'm assuming he grew up a Blue Jays fan, so I bet this is probably pretty cool. He grew up in Calgary, so it's not even really close to Toronto, but still, it was a Canadian team. I would assume he grew up a Blue Jays fan. But here's the thing with Michael Soroka that I want people to kind of have in the back of their head as they approach this season with him. Michael Soroka has not pitched in over 100 innings since 2019 when he was an all-star and top 10 in the NL Cy Young that year. Don't expect him to go past 5 innings pitched for his first few starts. It does not matter how good he is at this point. It doesn't matter how well let's say he's got 60 pitches through 5 innings pitch, and he is rolling. Okay, yes. Then I think the Nationals will allow him to go into that 6th inning and maybe even the 7th if he continues to roll. But that should not be the expectation. Soroka has battled a lot of injuries these past few years. Couple torn Achilles. It just has not been a good role for him. He is going to have to be eased into this thing. Last year, while he did start at the beginning of the season for the White Sox, we all know how it ended. It did not look very good. He then got demoted into the bullpen, in which he looked really good. But that is not the same here. You are going to have to really kind of take your expectations, crumble them up, and throw them in the trash at this point. Soroka is going to have to take some time. And again, he has not had the workload of a starting pitcher and has not really been in the feel of being a starting pitcher for the last few seasons now. Again, battling a ton of injuries, battling the Chicago White Sox and the awful team that they put on the field last year. Soroka is going to take some time. I'm not expecting him to go out there today and just light it up. And I don't think people should, by the way. That's unfair expectations for him. But with Soroka, I am relatively optimistic. And we're allowed to be, by the way. This is now the time where you can say, well, what if? What if Soroka returns to form? Because if Soroka, let's say he does return to form. Let's say the Nationals, they got it right, and the rest of Major League Baseball, they got it wrong. Then you've got yourself an all-star caliber kind of starting pitcher. Someone who does not give up the long ball. Someone who does not walk many batters, at least when he did back in 2019 when he was at his best. Someone who doesn't really strike out a ton of guys. Last year, he actually had his most strikeouts per 9 coming out of the bullpen. But Soroka, here's the thing with him. He's going to put the ball in play, relatively soft contact when he is at his best, and he's not going to walk many guys, and he does not give up the long ball, which is something that, in my opinion, is a huge, huge ask for this Nationals team because pitching, it's going to be a focal point for a lot of people all season long, and Michael Soroka, a lot of people will have their eyes on him, so I'm really excited to see his debut tonight. My prediction for him, I think he goes 4 innings pitched, 3 earned runs, a couple of walks, 4 Ks, gives up 6 hits, and maybe some loud contact here and there. It's going to take a while to get in the swing of things, but don't give up on him yet because he's going to have to take some time to work into being a starting pitcher yet again. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. I will catch you guys on the flip side. Enjoy tonight's game, 7:05 first pitch, Toronto Blue Jays, Washington Nationals, Soroka on the bump. Let's see how he does. I'll see ya. Go Nats.